It began on a Friday evening that should have been ordinary. The sun had dipped behind the rooftops, the neighborhood lit in amber glow, and I had just finished polishing my car, a deep blue Dodge Charger that had been my pride since my father and I restored it years ago. It wasn't just a car. It was memory, legacy, and sweat poured into steel. That's when Karen appeared, waddling across the cul-de-sac with that self-important strut of hers, clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon, chin tilted in defiance. She didn't greet me. She never did. Instead, she pointed one thick finger at the Charger and declared, "That vehicle is unauthorized in this community. HOA regulations prohibit muscle cars, and as president, I demand you surrender it for removal." I stared at her, stunned, waiting for a punchline that never came. She was serious. My neighbors peeked out of their windows, curious, their faces pale in the dusk. My jaw tightened. "Karen," I said slowly, trying to keep my temper, "this car is mine. It's registered, licensed, insured. And there is no clause in your handbook about muscle cars. You don't have the right." But she smirked, her eyes flashing with the cruelty of someone who thrived on power. "We make the rules," she hissed. "And if you don't comply, I'll call the police. Don't test me." Before I could even respond, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, her voice shifting to syrupy fear. "Hello? Yes, my neighbor is threatening me. He's got an illegal vehicle on our property, and he just said he'd hurt me if I reported him. Please send officers immediately. I'm afraid for my life." My blood ran cold. The audacity was staggering. She was spinning a fantasy with me cast as the villain, her voice dripping with false tremors. And sure enough, within minutes, sirens screamed down the street, red and blue lights painting the night. The officers stepped out tense, their hands near their holsters. Karen was waiting, tears smeared on her flushed cheeks, pointing at me. "That's him. That's the man who threatened me," she wailed. The neighbors gasped, whispers rippling. I felt the walls of accusation closing in, my stomach dropping at the thought of being cuffed for a crime I hadn't committed. But then the twist came, swift and sharp as lightning. A black SUV rolled up behind the cruisers, its engine low and commanding. From the driver's seat stepped a man I hadn't expected to see here, Chief Raymond Harlow, the federal chief of the State Enforcement Division and a longtime friend of my late father. The crowd fell into silence as his tall frame crossed the asphalt. He wasn't in uniform, but the authority radiating off him was enough to silence even the boldest. Karen blinked, her fake tears faltering. "Chief Harlow," she stammered, her voice wobbling. "Oh, thank goodness you're here. This dangerous man." But Harlow raised one hand, his voice deep, carrying finality. "Enough, Karen." His eyes locked on her, cold and sharp. "I heard every word of your 911 call. And unfortunately for you, our system records them. Your lies are on tape. Every fabrication, every accusation. You called emergency services under false pretenses and weaponized law enforcement for your own vendetta. That is a felony." The air cracked like thunder. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came. One of the officers looked away, ashamed. Another glanced at me, realization dawning. My chest heaved, a mixture of relief and fury battling inside me. Karen tried again, her voice shrill, breaking. "No, I don't understand. It was only trying to keep order." Harlow stepped closer, his words slicing through the night. "No, you were trying to abuse it. You're not the law here, Karen. You're a fraud, a bully, and tonight, you're exposed. You thought a 911 call would make you untouchable, but it's going to be the very rope that brings you down." The crowd erupted in murmurs, neighbors nodding, whispering of their own run-ins with Karen. Mrs. Green shouted from her porch, "She fined me for hanging my plants." Another man added, "She threatened to tow my van if I didn't pay her cash." One by one, voices rose, the truth finally breaking free under the weight of her downfall. Karen's face turned blotchy red, her composure shattered. She tried to retreat, stumbling backward toward her porch, but Harlow wasn't finished. "Officers," he said firmly, "arrest her. She wasted your time, endangered this man, and falsified a police report. And make sure the state attorney gets the recording by morning." The officers hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. Karen screeched, thrashing, her words a desperate jumble. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. I own this community. You'll all regret this." But the handcuffs clicked shut, her wrists bound, her empire crumbling in the middle of the street she once ruled with fear. The neighbors applauded not in cruelty, but in sheer relief, like a heavy weight had been lifted. I stood by my charger, the chrome glinting in the flashing lights, heart hammering with vindication. Karen was dragged toward the patrol car, her cries echoing, a fallen tyrant undone by her own false call. The sound of the patrol car, doors slamming shut, echoed like a gavel across the cul-de-sac, final and unyielding. Karen sat in the back, thrashing and sputtering, her face pressed against the glass like a grotesque mask of rage and disbelief. For years, she had reigned over this neighborhood with her clipboard and petty rules, striking fear into anyone who dared defy her. But now the queen of fines and threats was just another criminal in handcuffs, her crown shattered by her own arrogance. Neighbors stepped out from their porches, no longer afraid to be seen. Phones were raised, capturing every second. The night had transformed from dread into liberation, and I felt the weight of years of tension slip off my shoulders as Chief Harlow gave me a nod, a silent promise that justice was only beginning. The next morning, headlines splashed across the county. HOA president arrested after false 911 call backfires. Videos went viral, Karen screeching as she was cuffed, Harlow's commanding voice cutting through the chaos, the neighbors cheering in relief. News anchors chuckled as they replayed the footage, their tones incredulous at how far her entitlement had gone. Social media was merciless, turning Karen's shrieks into memes, her lies into cautionary tales. But beyond the humor, something deeper stirred. People who had suffered under abusive HOAs shared their stories online, flooding forums and news comment sections with accounts of petty tyrants who fined them, bullied them, and threatened their families. Karen had opened a wound, but her fall gave others the courage to speak. 2 weeks later, the courthouse brimmed with energy. I stood outside with dozens of neighbors, many carrying binders of evidence, others clutching stories they had been too afraid to tell until now. Inside, Karen shuffled in wearing a dull orange jumpsuit, her once proud gait broken, her head bowed, but her eyes still glinting with venom. The prosecutor laid it all out. False reports, abuse of HOA funds, extortion under the table. And then the twist came, one no one but Harlow had suspected. Karen hadn't been acting alone. She was part of a scheme with a developer planning to seize undervalued homes, flip them, and pocket the profits. Her rule enforcement wasn't about community standards, it was about harassment designed to drive people out, making their properties ripe for cheap buyouts. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Karen's eyes darted, panicked, as documents were revealed. Emails with the developer, handwritten notes calculating expected turnover profits, even secret audio recordings of her promising to make life hell for anyone who resists. Her 911 stunt against me had been just another cog in her machine, but this time, she'd aimed too high and caught the attention of federal law. Karen tried to defend herself, her voice trembling. "I was only doing what I thought was best for the community," she said, but no one believed her anymore. The judge's gaze was cold as he struck the gavel. "You weaponized power that was never yours. You endangered lives. And you conspired to defraud your neighbors for profit. This court sentences you to 4 years in state prison, restitution to every family you extorted, and permanent prohibition from serving on any community board." The applause that followed was thunderous, spilling from the courtroom into the street. For once, the community wasn't clapping for punishment, it was clapping for freedom, for the end of a reign built on fear and lies. Karen slumped in her seat, deflated, her empire of intimidation reduced to rubble. In the weeks after her sentencing, the neighborhood transformed. The HOA was dissolved entirely, replaced by a cooperative council where every family had a voice. People who had been strangers before now came together, united by the scars Karen left behind, but stronger because of them. Lawns bloomed with individuality, gardens, flags, decorations once forbidden now flourished like small rebellions of joy. Kids played soccer in yards without the shadow of fines, and laughter returned to the cul-de-sac like an old friend. One evening, Chief Harlow came by, his presence as steady as ever. He placed a hand on the hood of my Charger, nodding with approval. "Your father would have been proud," he said quietly. My throat tightened. That car, once a target for Karen's greed, had become a symbol of something greater: resilience, memory, and victory over tyranny. The community held a block party that weekend, tables lined with food, music spilling into the night air. For the first time in years, people weren't hiding from each other, they were celebrating together. I looked around at my neighbors, their smiles genuine, their spirits light, and I realized that Karen's downfall had given us something priceless. She had forced us to choose, live under fear or stand against it. We had chosen to stand, and we were better for it. As the sun dipped and laughter echoed down the street, I leaned against my car, a wave of gratitude washing over me. Karen thought she could take away what mattered most, but in trying, she gave us back something she could never control: unity, dignity, and the courage to fight back. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. No matter how loud the tyrant, no matter how false their power, truth will always roar louder in the end. Now I leave you with a question: when someone like Karen abuses power and turns lies into weapons, what's the right response? Do we endure in silence? Or do we rise together and expose the truth? I know my answer. What's yours?